What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? And I'm Elliot Electricity, and welcome back to another reaction video. Oh, oh, I am watching my intro. I am a horrible YouTuber. But anyways, welcome to another reaction video. Oh, before we get started, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you are new. Go to the channel. Well, because why not? Odds, I would really appreciate that. And today, you may be asking, what are we reacting to? If you, for some reason, did not read the title, today I am going to be reacting to this video right here by Cinema Summary, How to Eat the Death Trap in Mine. I've never watched Mine before, but we're about to find out how it works. I like to watch Cinema Summaries How to Eat videos on in my spare time. Go check his channel out. I'll leave the original video obviously in the description. And yeah, let's get going. This reaction is gonna be 30 minutes long, so hope you like long videos. Let's go.
If you just stepped on a landmine in the middle of the desert and one wrong move can blow you to pieces, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the minefield in Mine. These soldiers are making a huge mistake. Mike here is a US scout sniper, and he's been waiting with his spotter for a dangerous criminal to arrive. They see the target step out of a car, and Mike aims his gun straight at his head. He's seconds away from pulling the trigger, but something feels wrong. A woman in traditional dress steps out of his tent as he suddenly realizes that this is a wedding. The crosshairs are locked into the target, but seeing the bride with the groom makes him hesitate. Defying orders, the man lifts up his gun, reporting that the criminal has gotten away and he failed the mission, but he's going to immediately regret this. Below, the guard spots something flashing in the distance and realize it's the reflection of a sniper scope. He's given away their position, and the guards start firing at the cliff as everyone runs for cover. The soldiers retreat into the desert, hiding behind some rocks, and they call in over the radio, requesting a helicopter to rescue them. But there's a problem. The spotter is about to give his GPS coordinates when he discovers that his tracker has been damaged. He has no idea where they are, and the insurgents are getting closer. That's when the sniper has a clever idea and aims his gun at a cliff face in the distance. Pulling the trigger, the bolt impact breaks apart the soil, and the guards back off from their patrol to go check it out. Seizing the opportunity, the soldiers run away, but they have no idea they're walking right into a trap. Okay, nothing about this is smart. These soldiers are on a mission to kill dangerous insurgents, but just because someone is getting married, Mike here wants to pack up and go home. First of all, soldiers don't behave this way. They've already been planning this mission for exactly 3 months and 6 days, so backing out at the last second is irresponsible. Now, having said that, it doesn't look like they had a very good plan to begin with. Look at this environment. There's nothing here for hundreds of miles. So if their best idea after 3 months of planning was to run away on foot, then they did not think carefully about extraction. There's no place to take cover in the desert. Do you not have any form of transportation? And with 3 enemy vehicles to search the area, these 2 soldiers have no way to hide or outrun them. The cliffs here are obviously a tactical advantage, but it doesn't make much of a difference if there's nowhere to go. The truth is that without an escape vehicle, they'll be found very quickly, and the operation is doomed to fail. The smarter thing would have been to ride a motorcycle out into the desert, because it leaves very narrow tire tracks, and the vehicle is small enough to cover with a camouflage tarp to hide it from drones or enemy spotters. This would have given them a better exit strategy, and they'd be able to reach an extraction point quickly without being captured or killed. Now, even if they didn't have an escape vehicle, they still could have made much better decisions. The spotter here told the operator that they can't give their position because his GPS tracker is broken, but this is just lazy thinking. These soldiers should already know their coordinates because it was what they used to get here in the first place. If it were me, I would report my original coordinates as a starting point and tell the operator what cardinal direction we're heading in. That way, the evacuation team can map our moving trajectory and will make it a lot easier for them to find us in the middle of a desert. We'll still have to fight off the enemy soldiers, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to figure out our location. These guys gave up on their best option way too quickly, and it's about to get someone killed. Later, they radio in for help, but are told that in order to be extracted, they need to get to a village 6 kilometers away. Helicopters cannot reach their immediate location, or else they might get shot down, and that means there's still hours left of walking ahead of them. Taking position on a sand dune, the soldiers spot people in the distance, and the sniper figures out that the locals are digging for something. They think nothing of it and keep moving, but never realize that they're about to enter the most dangerous part of the desert. Suddenly, a metal sign comes flying towards them and lands at the sniper's feet. He inspects the text on the front and realizes it says "Danger, Landmine." His friend suggests it's just a trick the locals use to keep their enemies away, but the sniper disagrees, remembering that there are 33 million landmines buried in this region. The spotter insists that he's just being paranoid and laughs it off, but Mike here sees something in the sand that makes him worried. It's the footprints left behind by the locals, and it looks like they were avoiding landmines. His friend continues walking backwards and tells him to stop being paranoid, but just as he takes another step, that's when everything goes wrong. A landmine explodes, throwing up a huge cloud of smoke, and the sniper panics. He moves to check on his friend, but suddenly hears a click beneath his foot. The soldier has just stepped on a landmine, and one more step will kill him. Okay, this situation is completely their fault. First of all, regardless of whether you're a soldier or a civilian, there's one thing we can all agree on. A skull and crossbones is the international symbol for get the out of here, and these guys should have taken this much more seriously.
I mean,
that's just common sense, but it's so much worse when you know the real-world context of this place. The reason these soldiers are here is because they're a part of something called Juniper Shield. This is a U.S. military operation in Northern Africa designed as a counterterrorism unit to monitor arms trafficking and train allied countries to fight against radical insurgents. With this in mind, these soldiers would know that there's been an ongoing war between the Kingdom of Morocco and the Sahrawis to gain independence for Western Sahara. More importantly, there are also about 7 million unexploded landmines in this region from decades of conflict. That is not something to joke about. And if I had this information, I would be watching every fucking step I take. I should also point out that earlier, this guy said there were 33 million landmines, but that number is actually for 18 countries across the entire continent of Africa. So this statement is misleading. To make matters worse, most of the landmines that have been planted are anti-personnel mines, which are sensitive enough to be set off by footsteps, and they even move across the sand dunes from changing weather patterns. Now, there's a common misconception that mines only explode after the weight has been released, but it's not true. There are basically two kinds of anti-personnel landmines. One type is designed to explode immediately when it's triggered, and the second type is designed to be a delayed trigger, so that a marching army will walk further across the minefield and hurt as many soldiers as possible. The problem with this information is that if Mike here actually stepped on a mine, he would either already be dead, or he would need to trigger it a few more times for it to activate. The fact that it hasn't gone off yet should be enough reason to lift his foot off the ground, rush to the radio, and turn it on to call for extraction in order to save his friend. If that's not enough, there's another crucial detail here that completely changes how we look at the situation. When the Moroccan army planted the mines, they were trying to slow down the invading forces and make it harder for nomads to settle. These mines were placed near oases or on hilltops to stop their enemies from building villages. So a lot of the most fertile places in the desert are also the most dangerous. Now this all sounds like horrible news, but there's actually a silver lining here. If mines were strategically placed in fertile areas, then it's very likely that a village is close by. The Polisario forces in Western Sahara cleared thousands of mines to set up communities in the region, and the fact that there's quite a bit of vegetation around them, as well as a warning sign, is a clear indication that a village is nearby. That means if we run out of options, there's a chance we could signal the locals for help, even though technically, these soldiers should already be dead. The sniper is horrified to see his friend's legs have been blown apart and tries to call for help, but realizes his headset isn't working. That's when he spots the soldier's radio pack on the ground and tells his friend to calm down so he can check if there's a signal. The soldier tries his best to reach for it, but the man is in so much pain that he can't focus. The sniper urges him to take the med kit from his pocket, and the man pulls out a syringe full of morphine, jabbing it straight into his leg. Mike is relieved, and now free from pain, his friend pulls in the radio pack to make a call. He starts speaking into the communicator, but the sniper can't hear him in his headset and realizes the equipment isn't working. He asks the man to turn the radio on, but the guy is delirious from shock and starts rambling about wanting a strawberry slushie. Both of them know he isn't going to make it in this
Strawberry
condition, so the
slushy.
soldier leaves his friend alone in the desert. It's disturbing, but the sniper calms himself down, knowing he has to focus on his survival. Carefully, the man kneels to the ground and pulls out his knife, stabbing it into the dirt. He suddenly feels the blade hit a metal object, discovering the landmine is only a few inches beneath the surface. His best chance for help is to make contact through the radio, but it's stuck with his dead friend. Refusing to give up, the man removes his shoelaces and creates a makeshift grappling hook by wrapping them around his tomahawk. Standing up, he throws the axe and nearly loses his balance. One wrong move could have blown him to pieces, and he's lucky to be alive, but to his relief, the rope latched onto the radio pack. His plan has worked, and he slowly reels it in.
That was risky,
Inspecting
man.
the receiver, the man realizes it's run out of power, but remembers that they brought spare batteries for the mission. He searches through his bags but can't find them, and realizes they must be on his friend's dead body. It's too far away to reach, so he pulls out a solar charger and plugs it into the radio receiver directly. It's going to take time, but it's his only way to call for help. Taking stock of what he has, the man remembers he still has a signal flare, and this is going to be crucial if rescue finally arrives. Later that day, the receiver is finally charged, and the soldier immediately calls into base, requesting help. He explains that his partner has died, and he's standing on top of a landmine 4 hours from the village. But the operator has some bad news. Helicopters are still grounded from the sandstorm, and the only hope of being saved is that the sniper waits for the nearest convoy to arrive in 52 hours. Mike here is furious, but the voice on the radio drops another massive truth bomb. Nearly all of the landmines in this area are still active, and there's less than a 7% chance of malfunction. It's a death sentence, but if all else fails, he can try something called the Schumann maneuver. As he starts to explain what to do, the connection suddenly begins cutting out, and the signal goes dead. Okay, this soldier is determined to survive. But if he took a moment to consider the conditions of this place, he'd realize that waiting 52 hours for rescue is not a practical strategy. The high position of the sun, low humidity, and lack of rainfall makes this desert one of the hottest regions in the world. Most of the Sahara has an average atmospheric temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is brutal, but that's nothing compared to the temperature of the sand. During daytime, ground temperatures can easily reach 176 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not going to take long for him to suffer from heat exhaustion. Eventually, this will lead to extreme nausea and vomiting, which severely drains his liquids. Without basic covering, this would essentially guarantee that you would pass out and set off the landmine. It's inevitable, so we have to solve this now because we're not going to survive here for 52 hours. Now, Mike was doing a lot of things right because he took inventory to see what he could use to solve the problem. There's a lot of important life-saving equipment here, such as a medical kit, goggles for a sandstorm, a flashlight, one flare, and a tomahawk. By the way, you might think it's strange that he would have one of these because the US military does not officially issue tomahawks. But surprisingly, most modern Marines still use them on a regular basis, so this is not uncommon. He did a fantastic job using his equipment to pull in the radio, but there is one extremely important detail that he was not considering. When he lowered himself to the ground, he placed his right knee in the sand, and without knowing it, he removed over 80% of his body's weight off of the landmine. We've already established that this is not how mines work, but if they were pressure sensitive, then it probably would have been enough to trigger the explosive. A human leg weighs about 17.5% of your total body weight. So if this guy is around 95 kilograms, his leg would be 16.6 kilograms. Now, most of that weight is above the knee, so there can't be much more than 10 kilograms of pressure on this landmine. That means all he has to do is replace that weight with 10 kilograms of something else in order to free his foot. If we look at what we have, his rifle weighs 6.8 kilograms, and these backpacks are roughly 4 kilos, so these alone might be enough to do the job. It's a risky strategy, but kneeling on the mine has already established that it won't be triggered with less weight. So if your choices are to die from heat exhaustion or use this information to save yourself, it's an obvious choice. Setting a timer for 52 hours, the sniper tries to rehydrate but discovers a big problem. His water bladder is completely empty, and in the distance, he notices a massive sandstorm is coming his way. Mike quickly sticks his rifle deep into the sand, and it's the only thing he can do to protect himself from being blown off of the mine. The storm is picking up speed, and he can barely hold on as the winds knock the soldier off balance, forcing him to let go of the other pack. When the storm finally passes, he looks around and discovers his friend's body right next to him. The sniper is desperate to survive and searches for the batteries, but discovers a photo of the man's family and takes a moment to mourn his loss. He'll never be able to kiss his wife or play with his kids again, and it's a reminder that the soldier will do everything it takes
this
to
is
make
getting
it out alive.
sad.
Finding the batteries, he turns around to grab the radio, but is shocked to realize that it's been blown away from him. It's too far to reach, and he's lost his only way to communicate with the outside world. After 8 hours and 38 minutes standing on the mine, the sniper has finished all the water left in his canteen. He's running out of options, and in desperation, fires his gun into the air. But then he sees one of the locals walking in the distance. The soldier aims his gun, ordering him to stop moving, but the man keeps walking forward, careful to step around the explosives. Mike begs him for help, and the stranger asks the American what he's doing here. Realizing he speaks English, the sniper asks him for water and his radio, but the Berber is confused. Frustrated, the man makes it clear that if he takes a single step forward, the landmine will blow him up, and that's when the stranger approaches, gesturing at his canteen. The soldier hands it over as the stranger takes it and walks back, but gives the man one last piece of advice. He needs to keep moving on, or else he'll be stuck here forever. Okay. This soldier is luckier than he even realizes, because the odds of this man speaking English are incredibly low. Western Sahara has a population of about 400,000 people, and their native languages are either Arabic or Tamazight. Anyone who speaks a second language would either speak French or Spanish, because the region was colonized by these two countries in the early 1900s. The fact that he found help from someone that speaks his own language is a statistical anomaly, because it's virtually non-existent in this part of the world.
But it's
this
not
is even more
but it is
convincing when you
possible.
learn about how they watch movies. Surprisingly, the Sahrawi have an annual event called the Sahara International Film Festival, which is the only film festival in the world held inside of a refugee camp. But what's interesting is that they show Spanish films almost exclusively. Somehow Mike here found the one guy across hundreds of miles of desert that could speak English. But this is not going to help if we don't know how to use the water we have to survive. The guy finished his canteen after only 8 hours, which seems like a very short amount of time when you consider that he has 44 more hours to go. That's brutal, and common sense suggests we need to stretch the water for at least one full day. But this would actually be a mistake. It's a common misconception that rationing your water is the smart approach. But what nobody tells you is that what you actually need to ration is water loss. There are tons of documented incidents where people have been found dead from dehydration while still having full bottles of water. That's why we have to do everything we can to reduce the amount of liquid that is being lost by the body. The best strategy is to keep as much of yourself covered as possible. It might seem counterintuitive considering how thick his clothing is, but it actually keeps you cooler because it increases humidity and protects you from the drying effects of the wind and heat. The biggest mistake he's making, though, is that his mouth is open. In environments like this, a surprising amount of moisture is lost as water vapor in your breath, which makes you dehydrate much faster. By breathing through your nose, you can dramatically reduce this, buying you hours of survival before passing out from dehydration. While all this might seem pretty hopeless, the good news is that this
guy is
photo
very
proves there's a
smart,
village extremely
so-
close by. If you look at the man more closely, you'll realize that he doesn't have a working animal to help him trek across the desert, and he doesn't even have his own bottle of water. A local would never venture out into the wilderness without either of these, and it's a good reason to think that as far as bad situations go, Mike here is one lucky son of a. Several hours have passed, but the Berber hasn't returned, and the man is so desperate that he drinks his own pee. When suddenly, he spots someone approaching in the distance. It's a little girl carrying his canteen, and he realizes it must be the Berber's daughter. She runs over to him, careful to avoid the landmines, and holds out the bottle for the man to take. He chugs as much water as he can, and tells the girl to thank her father for him, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she pulls out some toy soldiers from a pouch and places them into the sand, reenacting the situation the sniper is in. Desperate, he asks her to retrieve his radio for him, but the girl doesn't seem to understand and runs away, leaving him to die. That night, Mike starts a fire to keep warm, but the flames are dying quickly. He can barely see a few feet around himself, and that's when he hears howling in the distance. A pack of
dear.
wild dogs are getting closer, and he knows it's only a matter of time before he's eaten alive. The soldier starts firing his rifle to scare off the animals, but the snarls are getting closer. Hearing barking behind him, he takes out his flashlight and sees one of the dogs drag his friend's body into the darkness. The man spots another dog slowly approaching him and fires his pistol at it. The wild animal runs away in fear and sets up a landmine, exploding into pieces. The next day, the sniper is exhausted from a brutal night without sleep, but is startled when he hears the Berber approaching. The man has come to check on him, commenting that he's very lucky to still be alive. Growing more frustrated, the sniper begs him to bring his radio over, and the guy finally agrees to his request. He walks to the communicator and drags it back to the soldier before handing it over. Desperate, the soldier snatches it from him and quickly gets to work replacing the batteries, but he never notices the Berber shaking his head in disappointment. The stranger decides to give him some more advice, urging the soldier to become a free man, and with that, he walks back towards the village. As the sniper watches him leave, he looks at his watch and sees there's still 24 more hours until rescue arrives. Okay, this soldier isn't going to make it. An inactive adult usually needs about 2 quarts of liquid per day, but high heat and dry winds can steal the water from your body quickly. You'll need gallons of water to stay alive in this environment, not just a couple bottles. Now, the soldier tried to solve this problem by drinking his own pee, but he wouldn't be doing that if he paid attention to his training, because the army has a field manual which specifically advises soldiers to not drink their pee in survival situations. Urine is made of 95% water, with the other 5% containing sodium, chloride, and urea. Seawater, by comparison, is 96.5% water, with 3.5% sodium and chloride. That means drinking urine is not that different from drinking seawater because the sodium content is going to seriously dehydrate you. If you keep drinking pee, it can trigger abnormally low blood pressure, which will damage vital organs like your heart, lungs, and kidneys. Instead, the best way to use urine is to do what the Sand Bushmen do and pee in a hole to lay down in it. The humidity will slow down the evaporation of sweat and keep your body's water without needing to replenish it so quickly. If I was in this situation, instead of digging a hole, I would actually pee into a container and then pour it over my clothing. It's not my idea of a good time, but if it helps cool my body, then I do whatever it takes to stay alive. Now, there is one setback to this, because surviving in the desert at night requires a completely different approach. As soon as the sun goes down, the temperatures will drop to an average low of 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're covered in urine, it will make it much harder for you to stay warm. Fortunately, there's a great way to solve this problem too. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi competed in the marathon.
I know I'm barely
a
talking,
6-day
but
race taking place in the Sahara Desert. On the 4th day, there was a massive sandstorm, and for 8 hours, the man couldn't see where he was going. After it passed, he spent 9 days surviving in the desert by finding shelter and moving slowly. It was only sheer luck that he managed to get help from the locals, discovering he had traveled so far off the race path that he ended up crossing the border into Algeria, 290 kilometers from the starting line. Now, the best thing to learn from his experiences is actually what he did to stay alive during the night. Since temperatures get so cold, Mauro dug a shallow hole in the sand and burned vegetation he found in the desert. He then filled in the hole and laid on top to sleep through the night. This heated the sand from underneath to maintain his core temperature, and if he hadn't done that, the sweat he accumulated during the day would have cooled down and froze the man to death. That night, Mike is fighting to stay awake. If he shifts his weight, the mine will explode, but the soldier is so exhausted that he begins to go delirious. He hallucinates that his dead friend has come back to life, telling him to stay alive for his girlfriend's sake. The man is terrified, but that's when the sniper quickly comes to his senses, realizing that the wild dogs have come back for him. Without a light, he can barely make out where they are, and fires into the darkness, wasting valuable ammo. There's not enough to take them all out, but his friend reminds him that he can try the Schumann maneuver as a last resort. The soldier knows that if the dogs knock him over, they'll set off the landmine, and he has no choice but to take his advice. Desperate to survive, he unties his bootlaces before pinning the shoe down with his knife. The man grabs his rifle and frantically begins digging a trench in the sand, but that's when he feels a wild dog take a bite out of his leg. Fighting for his life, he finally lets go, but the others are closing in. There's only one way out of this, and with all of his strength, he jumps out of his boot. The landmine explodes, sending him flying through the air, and lands on the desert below. But something isn't right. The soldier realizes he just hallucinated his escape, and the dog is still tearing a hole in his leg. He's trapped, as the rest of the pack begin to gang up on him and bite deep into his flesh. The man loses touch with reality, and by the next morning, he slaughtered the entire pack, with only 7 more hours left until rescue arrives. Exhausted and dehydrated, the soldier does not have much left in him to continue fighting. That's when the radio crackles to life, and the man picks up the receiver, saying he's still alive. Hearing this, the operator is relieved but has some bad news. The rescue convoy is going to be late, and it won't arrive for another 17 hours. It's too much time, and he knows he can't hold on any longer.
That's gonna be like another
That's
20.
when he suddenly hears his girlfriend's
Oh, you
voice.
mean
on the
another
radio.
day?
Emotional, he apologizes for being a screw-up and leaving her behind, but doesn't realize that it's just another hallucination. Mike has reached his limit, and the man tips over from exhaustion. He's going to die, but at the very last second, the Berber steps in and catches him, saving his life. Okay, honestly, this guy should already be dead. The soldier has managed to survive over 48 hours with no sleep and very little water, but now he's starting to hallucinate. This is a clear sign that his body is beginning to shut down from exhaustion, and that means he needs to use his remaining energy very carefully. Fighting off a pack of wild animals is the worst thing to do in his condition, but he might have lasted longer if he knew more about the wildlife in the Saharan desert. For starters, this creature is called the African wild dog, and they're absolute killing machines. These animals are specialized pack hunters, and surprisingly, more than 80% of their chases end in a kill. That is the highest success rate of any mammal on Earth.
Wow.
They are the definition of an apex predator, and all of this tells us they won't quit until they get what they came for. So if they were determined to kill you, you would be dead. Now, having said that, the truth is there have actually been no reported instances of wild dog attacks on humans. They're an extremely endangered species and will probably go extinct in less than 2 decades, because locals hunt and poison them to protect their livestock. The reason this is important is because as a soldier, Mike here should already be familiar with the wildlife of this region. Therefore, he would know that if the wild dogs are attacking him, it's because they're afraid of humans, not because they're hungry. And this information can go a long way in helping us survive. Fortunately, this soldier already has the perfect solution. This may sound strange, but it's scientifically proven that adult male human urine can actually repel other mammals. Not only are dogs able to smell human pee, but they can also pick up the smell of hormones, and even if the person has an infection or disease. If we've already poured urine onto our clothing to retain our body's water, there's a strong possibility that this might have also stopped the dogs from attacking at night. As crazy as it sounds, this method has already been proven to work on other animals like rabbits, deer, and skunks, who all hate the smell of human urine and tend to stay away from it. If Mike here had used his pee as cologne instead of an energy drink, these wild dogs would have recognized the smell as a threat instead of a late-night snack. Their sense of smell has an incredible 20-kilometer range, so they would have realized he was human and kept their distance. Now, the problem here is if you're already being attacked by a pack of vicious animals and you're not covered in your own piss, then we have to prepare to fight them off. But this is where Mike here made his biggest mistake. The man heard the dogs snarling in the distance, but instead of waiting for them to make the first move, he fired blindly into the night. This is incredibly stupid because his bullets are very limited in supply. If I were in this situation, the first thing I'd be thinking about is conservation of resources and energy. We need to stay alive and conscious until the rescue team arrives, but we won't make it if we use all of our stamina wrestling a pack of wild animals. With this in mind, I would quickly dig a hole and put my right leg in to anchor myself. This way, we won't get knocked off the mine when the dogs attack and less of our body is exposed.
This was me in this
we should also place the backpack over our most vulnerable body parts to protect us from bites. Then once we're prepared for the worst, the best strategy here is to wait until one of the dogs rushes in to attack. It's obviously a risk, but shooting a wild dog you can see is much easier than shooting one you can't see. And if they smell their own blood before yours, it might be enough to discourage more of them from attacking. This one simple change would save our bullets, preserve our energy, and improve our aim all at once. The added benefit is that if we manage to kill any of them within reach, we can use their bodies to help us stay warm during the night.
I do the mission and then boom, credits roll. All the movie's over. Or in 1 minute. So. Okay.
The soldier still hasn't triggered the mine after 48 hours, but he's too weak to continue. Knowing this, the Berber tends to the soldier's wounds and decides to tell him an important story. Years ago, he lost his leg after setting off a landmine in this very desert. The man taught his daughter how to disable the explosives and replace them with tin cans. But one day, there was a horrible tragedy. He accidentally set off a landmine, taking both his leg and his daughter's life, but has moved on since then and urges the soldier to do the same. Finally, the man picks up a strange blue bottle, telling the soldier it's a powerful healing drink and pours it into his mouth. With that, the Berber walks away, leaving him for the last time as the soldier sees the little girl vanish in the desert wind. Suddenly, the drink begins to take effect and he starts hallucinating. Walls erupt out of the sand, and a door appears right in front of him. Reaching out, the man turns the knob and opens it. On the other side are his memories leading up to the day he met his girlfriend. But the man is so delirious that he's completely lost touch with reality. Suddenly, his friend directs his attention to dust clouds in the distance and reassures him the rescue convoy is on its way. Mike doesn't know if he can trust his eyes and thinks maybe it's just a mirage. But when he looks through his rangefinder, it confirms the vehicles are coming. After all this time, Mike is finally going to be saved, and the radio crackles as his fellow soldiers ask him where he is. The man tries telling them his position, but the rescue team can't hear anything and are about to leave. He needs to signal them for help, and his only hope is to fire off the flare, but when he reaches out his arm to grab it, a bullet suddenly pierces his body. The insurgents have tracked him down, and he's got nowhere to run. With no choice, he stretches for the flare with all of his strength and manages to grab it. The soldier holds it up, ready to signal the convoy where he is, but the gunmen won't let him get away that easily. They start shooting and trigger a landmine behind him as the explosion blows the flare straight out of his hands. With his life on the line, he quickly comes up with a plan to take out the enemy soldiers. Determined, Mike shoots into the sand around him, triggering another mine that sent up a cloud of dust to hide his position. The insurgents can't see him through the debris, and the soldier takes aim with his rifle before sniping the enemies dead. With the area now safe, he looks around for his flare, but sees that it's now too far away for him to reach. There's only one method he can use to take it back, and with the convoy driving farther into the distance, the man decides it's finally time to move on. He lifts his foot up and takes a single step forward, but to his surprise, nothing happens. Somehow he's still alive, and the soldier falls to the ground in shock. Inspecting the landmine he had been standing on for over 48 hours, he begins digging it out of the sand and discovers it's actually a tin can the Berber had used to replace the explosive. Inside is a toy soldier just like the one the girl had in his hallucination, and the man realizes he was never in any danger to begin with. He could have left any time and followed the Berber back to his village if only he took the man's advice. With the most terrifying moment of his life over, the soldier picks up the flare and pulls off the cap, releasing the smoke for his allies to see. Rescue has arrived, and the man is relieved that he's going to make it. Days later, the soldier arrives back home, where his girlfriend is waiting for him at the airport. He's now finally ready to take his next step, trading in a landmine in the desert with the ticking time bomb of a bad marriage. But what do you think? How would you beat mine? Let me know in the comment down below.
God.
Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And that was how to beat the death trap in what it had done. Apparently, it was on a tin can this whole time. Wow. That was something. Check out subscribe. I've been checking out Cinema Summary for more. If you like that and you want to see more of those videos, I'll leave a link to the original video will be in the description. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. And I'm Elliot Electricity, and I'll see you in the next episode. Next video. Peace. I'm out.